gonna start recording.
All right, we are recording. We got Toma on the line and Scott and a special guest, Scott's daughter. So, Scott, do you want to introduce us here and let us know who else we have on the call today?
Of course. So great to be back for the fourth time. And joining me for the first time is, what's your name?
Charlotte.
Charlotte. So some of you who have seen her at Bitcoin Miami last year or Pacific Bitcoin the past year, or in Texas at that conference, might have met her in person. I know Daniel and Lauren got the pleasure to do that last year. And she's popping on the podcast because she's enjoyed our new product that Tomer was the author of and has a few questions and wanted to be part of the chat with Lauren at the beginning.
Amazing. So, Charlotte, how old are you?
5.
5. How many plushies do you have? How many cuddly little monsters do you have?
Just monsters or plushies in general? You're gonna have to get more specific there.
The Bitcoin Shamory little monsters.
So we gotta say there's a whole pile of them over that corner, huh?
There's a whole pile of them.
I was gonna say, I bet there's
can keep
hundreds
count.
in there.
Actually, there's one on our table right here that needs to be shipped out.
Oh,
That's the one you have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was nicely given to.
Yeah.
Yep,
Thank you, by the way. Thank you again.
of course. Well, you were part of the inspiration to make that happen with your tagline.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
Yep,
I know big the well also.
yep. So for those that don't know, the purpose of those chamois was to help build a water well in Africa, which now is complete. And so it's in Rwanda and is down there helping a village of about 1,200 people, I believe, get water for the first time without having to take I think it's a 4-hour trek that they used to have to do.
That's amazing. And that's the last time you were on the show, actually. We were talking about that initiative and the proceeds, the plushies that you sold at the conference and around the world, and the Geyser campaign and everything helps make that happen. So yeah, it's wonderful to hear. Well done. Very, very great to see.
No, it was an awesome part of the most important thing we've done today over the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Charlotte, do you have any questions then? Your daddy told me you might have a question for Uncle Toma here.
Can we set it up for you?
Mhm.
So the purpose of being on this show is because our new product is another book, and it happens to be the book that was authored by Tomer. And so the story is about Satoshi creating Bitcoin, which is awesome. And Charlotte had a question for Tomer about what she's enjoyed in the book. Go for it.
How do people know Satoshi was real?
ooh, wow, that's a great question. Well, as the book says, we don't really know who Satoshi was, or maybe even what Satoshi was, but we do know that someone or something that went by the name of Satoshi popped up on the internet in late 2008. And the posts are still there. So people still have a record of all of the original emails that the Satoshi entity sent, and that Satoshi created its user ID and posted on a forum, which is like an online bulletin board, where he talked to people and answered their questions. And he was the author of the Bitcoin white paper. So we don't know who it was, but we know that there was Satoshi Nakamoto. And we don't know where he went now.
Yeah. People say he went somewhere in the north. Oh, that's true.
People say that?
Yeah.
Who told you that?
Hmm.
The other day,
Hmm.
the book? Oh. Well,
In
the other week,
north. How far north? Do we have any other information? I mean, is he Santa Claus north?
He could be hiding out with Santa Claus. Santa shows up once a year. Maybe Satoshi helps him out.
Answer it.
yeah, if you put it on your Christmas list, ask Santa if he knows Satoshi. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Great question.
The only one. He lived in the north and Satoshi lived in the north.
There we go. We cracked the code, guys.
I
boy.
can't believe we
Well,
hadn't thought of this.
let's not say too much more. I think Satoshi wants to keep his location secret, if not his identity.
That is true. Actually, we have to keep this very secret, Charlotte. So you shouldn't tell anybody that Satoshi headed north.
Satoshi, Santa giving a gift to the world, everyone in the world getting a gift all at once. Maybe Satoshi is Santa and vice versa. There's a new theory.
Of course not.
No. Well, the other
No.
ago after we had read the book, she had a good question. She said, "Dad, how do we know that Satoshi isn't one of our neighbors?"
We don't.
No.
Satoshi
don't.
could be one of your neighbors.
These are the types of questions that the book has spurred up into 5-year-olds in the past couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Charlotte, Lauren is now going to ask you a question. You're currently upstaging her. So, I want to give this over now to the veteran in the room, the
That's not
13-year-old.
There's no staging. There's never gonna be a staging. It's
Well,
all
when
equal.
you were little and you were doing this podcast, do you remember Caitlin come on once?
That's when I was little. That's when I thought. I don't know.
Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, she's stealing my famous. And I was too. I don't know why. I I just loved being on the podcast all by myself with my dad, and then Caitlin started coming on. I'm like, no,
Pesky big sister.
she anymore. But yeah, she's gone now, so it's fine.
So
No, I'm
Charlotte,
kidding.
Charlotte, word of warning. Learn from Lauren's mistakes here. Don't let your younger siblings on the podcast.
Grab
Or
Wild
you
was
can, it's your
That's
decision.
not true.
So Lauren, what's your
Uh,
question?
What do you hope your book will become in the future?
Oh, this is another question for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to expect for this book. I really hope that it's something that Bitcoiners who are having kids can share with their kids to introduce them to the wonder and the magic of Bitcoin and the experience. And it's not, the book is not about money. It's not about economics. It's about invention and creativity and having the courage to do something the way that you think you should do something. It's about what Satoshi did for the world and the example that Satoshi set that anyone can grow up to achieve what they want to. So I hope this inspires a lot of children to walk in the footsteps of Satoshi and be great inventors and be great thinkers and look within to see what it is that they can give to the world and to then go ahead and give it to the world.
And for those listening or watching, whatever, but whatever medium they're using, if you go back and listen to episode 212, we did this on November 20th, 2021, Toma, when you wrote,
Wow.
you read the book on the podcast, and we had a bunch of kids on there, and they were pinging you questions. It was a great episode. I really loved it. And you did the same, actually, just by chance in Madeira. You did it in the kids' tent. Do you want to tell everybody what happened? You went in there and read the story?
Yeah, well, I didn't know that there was going to be a whole kids thing in Madeira. And when I showed up, first of all, Madeira was just such a wonderful experience. The sense of community. It was all these great Bitcoiners, but the thing that made it so unique and different was so many people came with their kids. And so it had a family feel to it that no other Bitcoin conference that I'd ever been to yet had. And I dropped by the kids area and so many of you guys were there. And the penny just dropped for me and said, I have this kids book. I'd love to read it. And sure enough, they found a window for me to read it in the kids' tent. And I think there were about a dozen kids at the time when I had a chance to read it again. And it was so delightful. It was actually one of the dearest moments for me in the last 12 months at least, because the book is a one-page introduction and then 10 one-page chapters, and there's like a pause between each chapter, and the kids were so generous with their applause. Like at the end of every chapter they all clapped, and so I got like 11 rounds of applause in reading this, and it was just so filling of my heart. And the kids were like deeply engaged and interested in what the story was. And there were a few parents in the room as well, and at least one of them was moved to tears by the story. So it reinforced to me, wow, this is a really apt way to communicate the story of Bitcoin to children and also to inspire their parents. I think one of the greatest things when you're a parent and you're experiencing some form of art, whether it's theater or music or a reading, and the kids are inspired or awed by what they're seeing, it's the look on the kids' face is one thing, but the look on the parents' face, looking at the kids' face, is even great, is even more inspiring. And to be able to see that, so that's really what I hope for. I hope that a lot of parents get to experience the awe of seeing the awe in their children's face, appreciating the story of Satoshi as told in a way that's accessible to children.
It was indeed a special conference, and I'm gutted I missed that particular moment. I was unable. I was otherwise engaged in other duties at that point. But there were a lot of wet faces on Madeira that weekend. That was the most incredible. I have never seen that. Even Jeff on stage couldn't keep it together. Andre's closing speech, he couldn't keep it together. Backstage, shit was happening, going down, and excuse my French, Charlotte. It was really amazing. So, yeah, do you have another question?
I have two things to say. One of the best things about Madeira is that there was a kids stage, and our taxi driver was at the conference. Remember?
That's right.
And yeah, I kept seeing him, and I think he recognized us a couple of times. But
yeah, we convinced him to buy a ticket to the event. He already had one. Okay, excellent.
Even better.
Question for Scott. You said you've been to a lot of conferences with Charlotte. Have you seen many kids at those conferences too, or?
Yeah, especially over the past year. I think last year in Miami, it was when it kind of started bubbling up, which was the first time we had brought Charlotte.
Yep.
And at the time she was only 3. And so it was kind of a risk because, as I know everybody here knows, those conferences can be crazy, especially for Mallory and I when we're working a booth. And it's just, 9-10 hours, just like nonstop talking and bringing a 3-year-old into that environment.
Not for me. I'm 5.
You're 5 now. Yes. This year you'll be 5. But
5.
yeah, when we go in a few weeks.
No, I'm already 5.
Yes, you're 5 now. And so it was awesome last year seeing so many other kids, whether, obviously you and Caitlin were there, but there was even more babies running around. There's so many Bitcoiners in the space in that baby stage of life. We have one sleeping down below us here as well. And so she'll be tagging along this year. And then at Pacific Bitcoin, there was even more kids running around, since that's a smaller environment, about 1,200 or so in Southern California. And so being able to be that family environment, we got to participate from afar in the kids zone for Madeira and help Andre and Frankie and everybody come up with the ideas. Unfortunately, that was right after the birth of Zoe, so we couldn't make the long hike over there. And we're also helping for the Nashville conference. There's going to be a whole kids camp there, and so we'll be able to, Tomer, read your book in the kids area on your behalf, as well as our other 2 books. And there's also other kids activities going on in a whole separate area for Nashville this year, which is new for the Miami conference. And there's been a few other conferences that have reached out to us asking for ideas for kids zones and that sort of thing. So I think what we've seen over the past year is something that will keep growing. And it's also nice that so many of these conferences are making the kids tickets free, as they should be. Like you shouldn't have to pay for those 5, 10, 15-year-olds to be able to be there.
100%, mate. And
They're the ones that need to learn the most, don't they?
Yeah.
One of them. A lot of people need to learn, but they're the future, so
there were more kids this year at BTC Prague as well.
Yeah, the same amount.
Well, the same amount of the ones you knew specifically, but if you just looked around the expo hall, there were more.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was watching.
I was just running around.
So let's get into what you guys have been working on then, because Tomer's had this book up his sleeve for a while. Tomer, why has it not been released as yet? What were you dragging your feet, sir?
I had written another book called Why Bitcoin, and I put a lot of energy into producing it, publishing it, launching it, marketing it, selling it. And it turns out a book is a lot of work.
Yep.
It's tremendous amount of work for the privilege of losing money in creating it. And but I didn't realize quite how much it took out of me to publish that original book. it's still available, and there's still trickles of sales of it. But it was a lot of effort to get that book out. And this children's book that I had written, I wrote it on a whim, almost not quite on a dare, but on a challenge. There was another writer I was speaking to who said that he wanted to write a children's book, but he about Bitcoin, but he didn't know about what. And my immediate reaction was, well, the story of Satoshi is one of the greatest stories of all time, and it's a true story, and it's a story of inspiration. You could write about that. And he's like, well, that's not what I want to write about. So literally the next morning, I woke up and I wrote the book in one sitting, and I was excited by it. I went on your podcast, and I and I read it to kids, and we had a positive reception. I ended up making a slight modification to the original draft based off the feedback I got from the kids and the experience I had reading it. And I thought I would publish it. And I tried to find, as a children's book, it needed art. And so I tried to find an artist, and it turned out that it was harder to find an artist that I wanted. I found one artist. She got sick for a while. She then managed to do some artwork, but the feedback was that the art was too mature for the age group. And so I really felt like I'd given it a couple of shots, and I forgot about it. I took a break from it. Lots of other things were starting to happen in my life, and I forgot all about the book. And it was at Pacific Bitcoin of last year that during the VIP night, there was a VIP dinner. I can't remember the exact circumstance, but Terrence Yang brought over a couple of his private clients and said he had heard of the book, or he had read the book. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he said Tomer's written a children's book, and they had kids. And I whipped it up on my phone, on my Google Docs, and I read it to them, and they cried, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is the most touching thing I've heard. You can't not publish this." I said, "But," and I took them through the story. Well, it's so hard to publish a children's book, this, that, the other. I said, "You just need to speak to the Shamory people, and they will get it published. And this has to happen." Like, they said it with a tone like, this has to happen. It's going to happen. So when the conference was over, I reached out and I said, "Listen, I've got this kid's book," and Scott may remember it better. Like, it's a bit of a jumble in my mind, but I said, "This thing apparently needs to happen. The universe has told me it needs to go. I'll give it to you, and I'll do whatever needs to be done to make it happen. But take it if you want." And then, Scott, how do you remember the introduction, and how the story goes from there?
Yeah, that was it. Before I jump into that, did you want to say goodbye before we jump into it to everybody?
Bye.
See
Bye
you.
bye. It was
Thank
so
you
nice
for
to meet
coming
you,
on.
Charlotte.
Having me.
Thank you. Thank you for your bracelets and your necklace and everything that you do for Bitcoin, Charlotte.
Come see me at the conference.
For sure. That's the main reason to go.
Exactly. No, you captured it well. It was, unfortunately, like you said, we didn't get a chance to actually personally meet in Pacific Bitcoin last year. But it was after the fact you shot me that DM and went through the story and said, "Hey, let's make this come to life together." And it was almost like a match made in heaven. You had the story written, and you had some prior artwork that had done, and we said, really, the only thing we want to do is work our characters into it to make it fit the Shamory brand and the life and that sort of stuff. And that was kind of what got the ball rolling. And that was when it must have been like November of last year.
Yeah.
So, the artwork always takes a bit of time. We had to, unfortunately, our prior illustrator that we had worked with stopped doing illustrations. So we had to find a new illustrator and go through that whole process, which is a beast in its own. But we ended up finding a Bitcoiner based out of the UK who did an awesome job being able to come to life. And now we're able. This is the test print. The bulk order is still coming, but
Oh,
I'm able to
wow.
hold it in my hand there. And Tomer's seen a digital version of it, but we got the characters coming to life or here different ways. So nice bright colors, fitting our brand. We got Satoshi doing his math on the computer, all different stuff. So we're excited to get this out there and being able to work with someone like Tomer. I remember going back to your podcast, Daniel, at the time you released that episode, and it's crazy to think it was 2021 of Tomer reading that book. So coming full circle, what, 3 years later, being able to actually finally get it out for the world and be a part of it is a special thing for Mallory and Charlotte and Zoe and I to be able to have it be part of the Shamory family. And it worked perfect for us, since our other two books are more for that younger age, kind of that infant toddler. Whereas this book, through Tomer's prior readings, I think that 6 to 12 was kind of the sweet spot that you had said, Tomer. So
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
gets us graduated to that next level, which kind of graduates with Charlotte's age as well, since she keeps going. So our products kind of keep growing with her, and now we have another baby to kind of grow down there. So that's kind of been our motto. We're really just building things that our kids would want, and then hopefully everybody else wants them too, which has been successful thus far. But yeah, really excited to get these books out into the world in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So what's the distribution method here? Where are you guys gonna try and launch, and where can people find it? Where can they come and get signed copies, Toma, one day, hopefully?
Sure. So the first place will be in Nashville, and so we'll have our booth there in the bazaar. So Mallory and Charlotte and Zori and I will be there with the first batch of books. Hopefully we'll have on our website a pre-order up here in the next week or two. So depending on when you release this, Daniel. So sometime in July, hopefully be able to get the pre-orders out there. And then once we're back from Nashville at the end of the month, be able to start physically shipping to everyone around the world. And then I know from talking to Tomer prior, we'll probably both be at Pacific Bitcoin, so probably do some fun stuff there, get some autograph copies, whatever we can come up with between now and October to make it fun.
Awesome. So Lauren, did you want to, before we carry on chatting, did you want to say goodbye? Do you have any further questions? Anything on your mind?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
All right.
All right.
Well, don't be afraid to find a cold beer in the fridge up there when you go.
We're gonna miss seeing you.
So you got all this to come, Scott. This is what a co-host is all about.
I know we're gonna miss seeing you in Nashville, you guys. I don't think you're going, right?
We're not. No, we can't make it, unfortunately. Yeah, and it's very. How old is Zoe?
I'll say goodbye now.
Zoe, see you, Lauren. Zoe's 5 months.
Wow, and you're taking her along.
We're taking her, so we'll see how it all goes.
That's amazing. That is, yeah. Well, good luck. I know what it's like. I know
It'll be
what
a
it's
full
like
8
to
months
have
by
a baby in
Pacific
tow.
Bitcoin.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Toma.
I
Actually,
think she'll be a full 8 months by Pacific Bitcoin.
exactly.
Veteran by then.
We just got back from Costa Rica last week, so we were down there for 2 weeks. So that was her first trip, and she did awesome. Except for the plane ride down there was a bit of a nightmare. The plane ride back was a lot better, but she did great while we were down there on that trip. So, knock on wood, she likes being in a giant conference hall for 3 days.
What were you doing in Costa Rica? Were you visiting Bitcoin Jungle, or was there something else going on?
Unfortunately, no, we were in a different spot. We were a few hours away from the jungle. It was just every year we try to do a trip with our moms, and so both of them are single and they happen to be friends. And so Mallory and I and the kids try to go somewhere with them to get them out exploring. And so this year was Costa Rica for almost 2 weeks. And my brother and sister-in-law also tagged along. So we spent some time in the rainforest area of La Fortuna, where the volcano is, and then along the Pacific coast for the other half of the time. So just family time, vacation, exploring, and had a blast.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Toma, gonna kick it back to you. So it's finally come to life after all these years. And you said it's kind of that sweet spot for 6 to 12, maybe tweens. But what I've heard you say twice on this call already is there were parents crying in the kids' tent in Madeira, and the people you read it to at the VIP event at Pacific Bitcoin also cried. So seems to me as though Bitcoin books are for everyone.
Yeah, I think this, to me, it's the story of Satoshi when presented right is so moving, and it's actually, for me, this Pacific Bitcoin sprouted 2 of these trees, right? Like it sprouted this one, which is Satoshi Nakamoto and his Bitcoin invention. I also met a guy named Bevan Waite there who ended up directing the film version of The Legendary Treasure of Satoshi Nakamoto, which is my most popular essay. And that's something that came out earlier this year, just around the day before the halving, or the day after the halving. I can't remember. The halving came early, right? So it was scheduled for right before the halving, but ended up coming up right after the halving. And that one's a much more adult telling of the story of Satoshi Nakamoto and what the purpose of his coins were and what the real treasure he left to humanity was. But both of those things, like the festival nature of Pacific Bitcoin and the number of creative people who are there and the number of people who are thinking about creating things for Bitcoin, they all they're all there's so much creative energy there that both of these things grew out of that. And I think, though, back to your question, like, it's so inspiring what Satoshi managed to do. He managed to create something that most people didn't know could be created, should be created, and the people who were most studied in the field said could not be created. And it was like, well, I'm going to do it anyways, right? And and the gift that it represents to the world and how much it changes things and how much hope it brings to the world and inspires in people is it's really unprecedented in our lifetimes. And if you're trying to look for an event that created as much hope in all of history, we're actually recording this on July the 4th, American Independence Day. And it's maybe like the last time something took place that created this much hope for the world and for so many people in the world was the formation of the world's first free country and the abundance that freedom created all over the world. And now we've got a repeat of it at a time when I think that hope is no longer as attached to the American dream as it once was. The dream of the American dream is somewhat faded. And so here we have this story that, when told right, brings up you know, brings people to such an emotional state that tears come out of their eyes. And the question is, why like, why do people cry when they see happy stories and happy outcomes like this? Why do they cry at weddings, for example? Like, everything's perfect at a wedding. The bride is beautiful, the groom is handsome, all the families are there. It's a moment of happiness. You wouldn't think that people would cry, right? And they say it's tears of joy. But there's a part of me, and I've heard this wasn't my original explanation, but it's that people, in moments of such perfection, people cry because they wonder, why can't life be this perfect all the time? And so that something emotional comes out that ends up being this swell of tears. And I think we look around and we say, why can't everything be as perfect as the promise of Bitcoin? And when you hear it told through the story of Satoshi, it brings that up. I think the beauty is that the hope of this story is it inspires people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do, that are for their own good, but for the good of everybody else and the good of humanity and the good of our posterity, right? Like, for the whole idea, you have children because you want to bring a better world to people who don't yet exist, who you want to be close to, and you want to experience the joy through them that the world that you're leaving for them is going to create. And I think Bitcoin is wonderful in that regard. Like, almost all the young Bitcoiners that I know are having kids or want to have kids,
Mhm.
whereas a lot of the other young people I know are less optimistic and doubting whether they should have kids and whether they want to have kids. And so I think there's definitely something about this Bitcoin story, this Bitcoin community, that is saying there is a hope for the future. There's a great future. We're building it together. And that's, of course, all standing on the shoulders of what Satoshi got started.
Well, Scott's a lot younger than us. He's got friends. I mean, he's at baby rearing age right now. How does that resonate with you, Scott? Like, if you look around, like, your normie friends versus your Bitcoiner friends, I mean, Bitcoiners, they can't wait. They want to get on with life and have as many kids as possible. And there's so many Bitcoin babies coming up. I did a recent episode with Katie the Russian talking about this as well. Yeah, what do you see around you?
Yeah, I think we definitely see the Bitcoin side of it. I think we're also blessed in the sense that most of our non-Bitcoin friends or family other are similar line mindset. So we're lucky to have a lot of those kids and that sort of stuff. I think you definitely see it a lot more in the Bitcoin community. Like you've said, especially over the past year, I think it's probably every day you see,
Yeah.
multiple people posting about either they just had the baby or the baby's on the way or, whatever it may be, which is awesome to see. So I think that Bitcoin baby community is bursting more than anything else. But from our personal side, we're lucky in the sense that, we I think you try to bring people around you, whether it's Bitcoiners or not Bitcoiners, of a similar mindset. And so just naturally that kind of gravitates towards Mallory and I. And then, especially once you have kids that are now, 4, 5, 6 years old, I'm sure you'll remember they start playing sports or whatever it may be. So then you're around those families that also have kids. But I will say some of the bigger differences is, you hear less complaining out of the Bitcoiner side of things about, life in general or work or whatever it may be, or money. Whereas, when you're on the non-Bitcoin side of things, it's those typical stereotypical type conversations that might come up, which aren't as positive and light, that just kind of naturally happens. But it's also awesome to see through going to conferences, the kids meeting other kids that are then becoming friends from around the world. For example, Charlotte, you guys might know Nathan Fast from Swan. I'm sure you do, Tomer. So Nathan has a daughter who's about the same age as Charlotte. They've never met each other. But last year in Miami, Nathan got a bracelet for his daughter and brought it back to her. And since then, him and her and Charlotte have been pen pals. They've never met each other, live in different states, but they've sent multiple letters back and forth or pictures to each other, just, like they're friends forever. I'm sure one day, but maybe it'll be Pacific Bitcoin this year or whatever it may be, when Nathan decides to bring the whole family along, they'll get to meet in person. But little things like that we are able to see, Charlotte remembering Lauren and Caitlin from last year, or Charlotte making friends with even older people, like she gets messages from a mutual friend, I know, Frankie, back east, who's able to become kind of an older pen pal for Charlotte and get those bracelets. So it's not just kids, it's just being able to have role models to look up to in the community is something else that is a value of being able to bring your kids to these events, let them meet those people out there, see how positive and bright the future can be, and kind of grow from there.
It's so true. And a huge shout out to Frankie Hoddle, who did so much great work at Madeira and really took my daughter Sophia under her wing. And Sophia was 16, and they worked so hard together, unbeknownst to Claire and I, like so many Telegram messages back and forth and this, that, and the other thing. And yes, we'll try and get this person in to come and do a talk. And we managed to, they lent on me for help, and we managed to get Giacomo and Jack Mallers to sit down and do a panel with a 13-year-old asking the questions, 12-year-old maybe. And the title of the panel was Explain Bitcoin to Me Like I'm a 12-year-old. And he had a bunch of questions set up, and that lasted about 20 minutes, but we kept him up on stage for 40 minutes as we were just pinging questions at them from the kids. And that was amazing to see. And then we get home, and about a week or two later, Sophia gets an email from this girl's mum, and she's figured out, this was the little girl that sat in the front row every single day for 3 days straight and was just mesmerized. And she wanted to be pen pals with Sophia. And Sophia was, her heart exploded. It was just ridiculous. And I know Frankie will be listening to this and her heart will explode. And this is the circle, right? This is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to create here. You never know who you're inspiring. And Tomer, your book is going to touch so many people, because if you're an adult sitting down with your children and you're reading that book and you're forced to read it every night for 2 years straight, because that's the book they want to hear, you don't have a choice. Sure. You are down, and they've got the Shamory plushie on their lap. And Scott, what you're doing, you and Mallory, you're going with the plushies, and the card game, obviously that's a little bit more advanced, but you've got Goodnight Bitcoin, the hardback books. Did you do Goodnight another one?
Yes, we got Goodnight Bitcoin was the first book, and then If You Give a Monster a Bitcoin was the second. And so those are both the hardcover ones.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah, shield those. Cool. Yes, If You Give a Monster a Bitcoin. Right. That. These are the ones you read from, like, I don't know, 9 months to 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Or, maybe if they're just starting to read, so it's their more simple rhyming style, that sort of stuff. So being able to get that lower age group. But to your point, and I know I've probably said this story on your podcast before, but maybe people are out there, it isn't just for the kids. And we've seen that firsthand. We've told the story where we went away one night and my mother-in-law was watching Charlotte and Charlotte wanted her to read, I think it was Goodnight Bitcoin. It was one of them, pretty sure it was Goodnight Bitcoin. And we got back that night, and my mother-in-law said to Mallory and I, "Oh, Charlotte wanted me to read Goodnight Bitcoin to her for her bedtime book. A question for you guys: How did you come up with the name Satoshi?" And so just those little questions to be
Right.
able to answer them is kind of like, they're good for adults too, to
Yeah.
start stimulating the brain. And like you said, Tomer, get interested in the concept, whether they know about Bitcoin or not, and
Yeah.
just get that baseline. Everybody has to start somewhere. And we've always said, these products are primarily for kids, but if an adult can learn from reading this book 500 times to them over the span of 12 months, then that's just as beneficial.
Yeah,
Well,
there's kind of two things that I want to respond to there. Is like the the prologue, the prelude to this book is a very short chapter, again written for children. It's not an official chapter of the book, but it says, I want you to know that no matter what else you appreciate about this book, this is a true story you're about to read. It's not a made up fairy tale. It's the real deal. I think that's what's so magical about this story. Like you watch a lot of children's content and it always has this happy ending and this fairy godmother comes and does this special thing and the good guys win at the end. But you worry that that's constrained to the realm of fiction and that happy endings aren't necessarily this part of real life. But this is a story with a very fascinating and happy ending. And the happy ending is we have Bitcoin and that nobody harmed Satoshi, right? And I think that's really glorious. So this is a true story, right? You're reading a kid's story that's a true story. And that's an inspiration for kids, and it's also an inspiration for adults too. The other thing I wanted to say is my kids are older now; they're in their 20s. But I think one of the fondest memories I have of being a dad of young kids is reading books to them. Like we would read every night. And when it was bedtime, we would get in, they were in one of their beds together. I'd have one kid on one arm, one kid on the other arm, and a book in the middle. And I read them, so many books. And I can't remember when it came to an end, at what age, but it was like something was torn from my life. So like reading to your kids is truly one of the greatest things. Sure, you can give them an iPad and they'll go off and interact with something, but reading an actual book to them, turning the pages, if there's illustrations, having them ask. But I remember my daughter would always point at words because she was the younger of the two, and I'd have to explain, and the other kid would get frustrated that like, well, let's keep reading, stopping and explaining what every word is. But we went through all the Harry Potter books, the Mysterious Benedict Society books, a couple of the Ender's Games books, and it was on and on. Like we never weren't reading a book together. And even when we went on vacation, like which book are we bringing on vacation with us was important. We would sit in beach chairs or on the beach and read. So like read to your kids, and I think it'll just have a really positive impact on them. But it'll be one of the most fulfilling experiences of your life.
Yeah,
100%.
we
It'll
do.
go when they get bigger.
Yeah, same here. We literally go to the library probably once every 2 weeks, and Charlotte will check out a stack of about 30 to 40 books. And she no longer wants the kid books. She's getting chapter books
Mhm.
that take, time to actually go through and read. And every night get to read five chapters, which are now long chapters. So it takes a bit of time. And every morning she wakes up in the morning, and the first thing she does is she has her smoothie breakfast and wants books read to her on the couch. And so that's the start and the end of to her day. And going back to, I know, a passion of Daniel's, she's homeschooled. Technically she'd be starting kindergarten next year, but she's been doing homeschool for a while now. And it's part of the beauty of not just Bitcoin, but combining Bitcoin with homeschool, in the sense that Mallory and I have the freedom to be able to make that happen 7 days a week. We can wake up every morning without an alarm, being able to, one of us will exercise, the other will sit on the couch and get Zoe on the couch and read to Charlotte for a little bit, and get on with our day, whatever it may be. But we're not, there's not an alarm that's then getting the kids ready and then pushing them out of the house and then going through that whole thing and tossing a piece of French toast in their face or whatever it may be. But we can have that family time to start the day and to end of the day. And to your point, Tomer, it's educational too, because it's reading, it's spurring imagination, creativity. And now she's of the age where we make her read some of the book herself. And so
Yeah.
Obviously getting that educational content in there as well. But yeah, that's part of the beauty of having the freedom of Bitcoin, and being able to combine that with the homeschool side of things.
And this is what John Holt talks about a lot in his books, especially Teach Your Own, I think. And John Taylor Gatto echoes the same things. Like, kids don't learn to read at school. They learn to read on your lap, either first thing in the morning or at the end of the day, or like you said, Toma, sitting around on the beach and you just got a bunch of books and you go on that journey together. And goodness, whoever wrote Going on a Bear Hunt, I have no idea how many times I read that book, but the kids all knew the lines and they all knew the actions, you know, going through the grass and going through the pond, but that's all I look forward to at the end of the day. After a shitty long day at work, you know, trapped in a freaking toxic atmosphere, thinking I'm doing something on a foreign exchange desk for 10 11 hours a day. But no, all I wanted to do was get home and read stories to my kids. And this is why we need more books like this. And well, Scott, like you took a flyer on this, man. You left your job, right? You checked out. And this is what you know, this is inspiring. And you too, Toma, you've got a story to tell about this as well. And leaning into Bitcoin. And a lot of plebs listening, they're on the fence right now. You know, they're waiting for that pump. And I hope this pump is going to release another 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 plebs to go and do and experience what we're talking about, because this is the best way to raise a family. And if that is too late for you, then lean into you know, early retirement and then giving back to Bitcoin in 2 or 6 months time when you've like figured out what it is, what's your niche, and you want to come back and give back. I mean, it all sounds woo woo and it all sounds kind of new age and stuff, but we've all felt it. So Scott, what's happened since like you threw in the towel and like, you know what, you know, and you got a young family too, man. Like that was a big decision. There would have been some sleepless nights involved in that.
No, definitely, for sure. And I mean, bring it full circle. That's, you know, the very first podcast I ever went on was with you. And I just tweeted out earlier today, I think you saw, you know, the price of Bitcoin was 68.50. I think it was April of 2021. And so coming full circle here for the number 4 time. And to your point, you know, back then we just had the game and it was just an idea. I had shot you a cold DM, being I think it was around the time you first started the podcast. Lauren wasn't even coming on yet. And so, you know, we connected and bonded over not only the game side of things, but, you know, ed tech and homeschool and that whole side. And so it's been a great friendship since then. And it was, let's see, December of 2022. So about a year and a half later, when Mallory and I decided, you know, we have something here. Is it going to make us millionaires? No, but it's a passion that, you know, I can take the lead on, as far as Shamory goes, to be able to say, you know, let's grow this into something, whatever it turns out to be, and it'll be enjoyable and something we can do as a family. Luckily, you know, Mallory still has her full-time employment to help keep the lights on and keep the everything going in our household as best as possible. And then just the Bitcoin side of things obviously helps out too. But it was scary, to your point, Daniel, and you don't know what is going to happen. You know, it had been 15 years in that profession for me. Prior to that, you know, having a steady paycheck and you know what you're going to do every day, and you know there's that comfort side. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to be trapped in that cycle forever. And we both saw Shamory and what we could potentially build it in as an outlet, into exploring what could be. And you know, since then, you know, 2 years later, I guess, since that time, we don't regret it for a second. You know, like I said, I wouldn't be able to wake up every morning and exercise and have time with Mallory and our daughters, you know, in a free flowing way. We wouldn't be able to homeschool. We wouldn't be able to take, you know, just, you know, a random Wednesday, you know, okay, let's go to SeaWorld, or let's go to the water park, or whatever it may be, or let's go to the Padre game. You know, being able to have that, you know, it's not just the education side of things, but it's just the fun activities you can do as a family as well that are just as important. And so all of those, while yes, sure, you left a lot of stacking ability on the table by leaving the other full-time job, but you stacked so much more outside of just Bitcoin over the past 2+ years of not having that employment. That's made it more than worthwhile. And then just being able to have the creativity to continue to grow the product line, be at the conferences, talk to people, you know, around the world. That's, you know, just as fulfilling as everything else. So the one thing I say to everybody is, doesn't matter what your idea is. If you have something that you want to put out there, whether it's Bitcoin related or not, just do it. Start small. We've done everything ourselves. I'd never made a website myself, never sold e-commerce myself, never gone through manufacturing, book publishing, game creation, plushie creation, Bitcoin teether, baby teethers, you name it. Just kind of learn as you go. And the nice thing about the community is there's so many people out there who do know those things. Whereas if you find somebody like, oh, I want to learn about XYZ, let me shoot that person a DM or whatever. Odds are they'll probably respond and will probably help you out in whatever questions you may have within the Bitcoin community.
Yes, and Toma, like I want people to understand, and you can riff on this. If you are stuck in that moment of, well, I can't give this up because of all of the reasons Scott just explained, I've got a steady income, fiat income, I can stack that into Bitcoin, I'm in my comfort zone, I know my routine, my wife and family are seemingly happy. You have not considered the opportunity cost of staying a fiat employee.
Yeah, it's not just one change. It's a whole change when you dedicate yourself to something that you're passionate about and care about in what you do, as well as who you do it for. Because I think we view, for many of us, our career as the work we have to do, not the work we love to do, so that we can give what we need to the ones we love. But that comes at more than just a cost of the hours you put in. Subconsciously, there's a lot of potential that it creates resentment towards the ones you love, because look what you have to put yourself through to give them love. And although you shouldn't feel resentment, at some point eventually you do, 20 years in, 30 years in, and there's a lot of healing to do to not have resentment about it. But there's nothing that's going to take away the regret that you have of, I've put 20 years in of driving 2 hours a day and putting in 8 hours a day to something that hasn't been as rewarding and as fulfilling as I wanted to be. And I know what I could have done with that time otherwise that would have been so much more fulfilling and rewarding. So it's a very fear-based world we live in, because it's like, if I don't have the job, if I don't make enough money, then we can't have the things the next door neighbors have. And what you're missing out on is, well, the things the next door neighbors have aren't the things you want. It's probably not even the things the next door neighbors want. Figure out what you want, and have the courage to revisit it from time to time and ask yourself, like, literally for me, just the other day, after having now dedicated my life to Bitcoin for coming on 4 years, having taken that leap of faith that if I do, good things will come of it, I asked myself the other day, and I had like a whole dialogue with myself as I stood at a fork in the road, in the path in the forest. It's like, do you continue on this path? Or is there some other path, some other fork that you want to take now? Have you given all that you've got to give? Have you gotten all that you're going to get out of writing about Bitcoin? Is there something else you want to do? And I had a long dialogue with myself, which I recorded, and I still have yet to listen to it. But it was like, here is it's consistent with, here is this path of hope. There's a lot of reasons to believe Bitcoin is a great path, and that you can do the most good for yourself and others by staying on this path. But it still requires some faith. It's not all guaranteed. It's not guaranteed to happen quickly. There will be setbacks. That the road is not all easy. It's filled with hardship and hard times as well. It's not taking the easy road. Turns out that there is no easy road, and that everything comes with its own challenges and its own hardship. So it's worthwhile revisiting and asking yourself these questions all the time. And it's hard to have the honest conversation with yourself, because you're so filled with inertia and fear and comfort and consistency. I guess that's kind of what I meant when I said inertia. It's just, if you keep doing the same thing you've been doing, and everybody expects you to keep doing the same thing you've been doing, there's not going to be that clash of people saying, "What the hell are you doing?" or you saying, "What the hell am I doing?" But sometimes you really need to do that, because you feel this calling, you feel this beckoning, something is really appealing to you, really attractive to you. And like that for me was, I've been in Bitcoin for 10 years now. I've been in Bitcoin for 4 years. Like I've been doing Bitcoin for 4 years. But from the moment I discovered Bitcoin, it was, this is fascinating. It's enthralling. I'm obsessed with it. I want to learn more. I want to dedicate my time and my life to it. And I didn't really have the guts to do it, or the opportunity to do it, or the necessity to do it, or the opportunity I don't even know how to describe the word. But once I finally took the plunge, it was a really, really exciting. It's been a really exciting 4 years so far. So, and I certainly don't regret that. And I doubt I'll be on my deathbed at the end and say, "Oh, why did I do the Bitcoin thing?"
No way,
Right?
man.
It's
No
like, why
way.
didn't I do it sooner? Would be the only regret.
Exactly. And I that sounds like a podcast right there. You just releasing your dialogue to yourself. I'm just going to shill that idea to you. But
Right.
I can't remember whether you tweeted this or whether you said this to me on a podcast we once did, or I've heard you say it somewhere else, or even if you've written an article, or even if it's a chapter in one of your books. But you said something along the lines of, have you declared your love for Bitcoin?
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah.
remember?
I've said it in a number of places. I had a podcast originally that was called For the Love of Bitcoin, and
Right.
it was basically this confession, which is like, I love Bitcoin. I like, and I'm not ashamed to say it anymore. Right? There's something magical about it. In my book, there's an article, one of the chapters, the other book, not the one that is for kids, Why Bitcoin is called Why Bitcoin is Worthy of Being Loved. And I describe in there what Bitcoin really, how it presents itself to the world, and why that's worthy of love. And so, and I'm sure that I've tweeted something out like that as well and said it on podcasts. It's like a lot of people, it in any relationship, it's like, who's going to say I love you first? And what if the other person doesn't say I love you in return? And, in your relationship with Bitcoin, there's something so fascinating about this thing. What it gives to you, the opportunities of what it allows you to make true for yourself is really extraordinary. And how can you not love being given your freedom? How can you not love being given independence, being given sovereignty, right? So, and so you have to be the first one to say it, because Bitcoin doesn't speak, right? But it depending on the circumstances, you may hear its voice, you may hear its calling, but it's not, it won't be in the same way. And there's just something cathartic about then being the first one to say, I love you in this relationship, to say, I do love Bitcoin. It gives me something that I can get from nothing else. It doesn't prevent me from loving other things. Like, there's so many things in the world that you can love. But to be able to say, this is actually one of the words that describes the emotion that I feel towards this thing. And when you do that, it separates you from saying, well, this is just money. This is only money. This is just a tool. There's nothing really special about it. There's nothing emotional about it. Like, what is special about Bitcoin is the emotions that it evokes, is the freedom that it gives. It's not that it's just money and that money has no purpose. It allows you to deal with other people by mutual agreement, without force, without violence, and to give the best of what you have in exchange for the best of what they have. This all sounds like really, really positive stuff. So the ability to exist in that state, as opposed to a state of violence and not doing your best and being exploited. Wow, how can you not love that? And so I encourage people to, like, surrender to that emotion and feel it. And that's what will give you the courage and the strength to live by the principles always, and to not second guess yourself, and not look around at other people and see, well, they don't express a lot of emotion, they're subdued, that maybe that's the right way to be. Like, be yourself, let your feelings come out, experience your feelings and express your feelings. And if someone else laughs at it or mocks you for it, don't be affected. Like, don't be affected by it. You are who you are. And there's really no shame in expressing love and feeling love, especially for all the best reasons.
Absolutely. And Scott, I wish I should never regret, but looking at you, and you got Bitcoin in your life, and such a impactful time of your life for your family. You know, I walked away from my fiat career without finding Bitcoin. I hadn't found Bitcoin yet. I'd poo-pooed it many times. And I've pretty much been around my kids ever since Caitlin, when she's the oldest, 8, and she's now 18, 19. So I still regret that first 8 years, man. Like that is how tough it is. And Tomer, I know your kids are even older. This is the time. Like, you know, this is the time to lean into Bitcoin and realize that once you've already unlocked financial freedom. It's not about how high your stack is. It's way more than that. And, you know, to see how you and Mallory get to live your lives now because of what Bitcoin has essentially provided you with is, yeah, it gives me so much hope for the future for younger people following in our footsteps.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And in our situation, it was a combination, as crazy as it sounds, of Bitcoin and the craziness of COVID. You know, obviously there's lots of horrible things that happened in many different ways because of that mess. But part of it was, you know, Charlotte was not even a year old when all that started to happen. So we, you know, at that time, you know, everybody, you're locked down, you're at home. As things progressed there, I was still working my other job and Mallory was as well. But we said, you know, we can never leave. Like we can never, I don't want to leave Charlotte every day to go to an office. So it was a combination of, yes, there's the Shamory Bitcoin side of things, but also realizing, to your point, Daniel, these years are going to be gone at some point, and I don't want to waste them 5 days a week, you know, driving somewhere for 30 minutes, sitting there for 8 or 9 hours, driving home for another 30 minutes, putting her to bed, doing the same thing. And so there was just that combination of factors from Charlotte's young age, right after she was born, to be able to realize, okay, you know, let's change our life for the better. It might, you know, make us figure out more financial flexibility in different ways that we have to learn how to live with. But you know, we'll figure it out, and that's what we've done, and that's what we're going to keep doing. As you know, I don't see any reason why we won't be able to keep doing that through, you know, through Zoe and everything else. So, you know, it's been an amazing thing just being able to literally day in, day out. The funny thing is, if you ask Charlotte what my favorite thing to do is, she'll say, go to work, which is the craziest answer in the world, in the sense that when I go to work, now we just moved a couple months ago, so now there's actually an office we can go to in our house. Before it was the corner of our bedroom. We're not spending many hours there. But because I think she thinks it's a fun thing, because she gets to go to the conference and she sees these characters, she thinks of work as fun. And so she wants to do that one day. You know, earlier when she was talking about selling bracelets, like you were bringing up, Daniel, she's already an entrepreneur in the sense that last year in Miami, she made those bracelets, and she only had bracelets, and there was a QR code there, and people could donate whatever they wanted to, as far as going right to her wallet. And she did well. People are generous. And so when Pacific Bitcoin came around a few months later, and she was coming, she's like, well, but Dad, I need another product, because when you guys go to new conferences, you usually have something new. So I need something new too. So she did bracelets and necklaces for Pacific Bitcoin last year. And so now we're full circle. We got Nashville coming up in a few weeks. She's going to have a third product. It's going to be keychains. So she'll have bracelets, necklaces, and keychains. And so those little things of being around your kid every day and letting them see the fun side as well as the work side and creativity, and putting her out there. And, you know, we say all the time, one of the best lessons that she's learned from going to these conferences is when she asks somebody if they'd like a bracelet or a necklace and they tell her no. That's perfect. Let her hear no. Let them walk by, because she's going to be told no, whether it's about selling things or creating things or just in life in general, you know, for the next 90 years. And so getting her used to that, going back to now when she was 3, you know, it desensitizes and gets them used to that courage to be able to move on to the next person. And she does not lack courage to be able to keep asking people if they'd like a bracelet. And so all these little lessons have come from us just being around our kids 24 hours a day, you know, 7 days a week, literally, where we're just a family unit for the most part. And it's hard at times, because sometimes you want a little break, but for the most part, it's an amazing thing.
You just explained homeschooling. That's what
Yeah.
people don't understand. People think
Yeah.
homeschooling is sit down, get the math book out, get the science book out, get the English book out, and spend an hour on each topic, and then have a lunch for a break. No, that's school. That is school. That's what they do at school. They absolutely obliterate the love of learning. But what you're doing, exactly that is homeschooling. Just
Yep.
working with them, giving them ideas, letting them run with it, putting tools in the way of them when they need it. So she wants to make necklaces. What do you need? You need supplies. Who can get that? You guys. You just
Yep.
turn up one day and there they are, and she gets away to making. And entrepreneurial pursuits. So, human beings are entrepreneurs by default. We are problem-solving machines. That's it. And we've been so suffocated of that over the years. And that's what K through 12 does, it strangles that out of you. And yeah, anyway, well, that's my little rant. So
No, it's a great rant because it is, I think for so many of us, like I talk with a lot of other Bitcoiners, and there's many of us who are getting on in our years who have to acknowledge that's exactly what happened to us. Had we not been put into the machine that in grade 1 taught us everything that the government said we need to learn in grade 1 and nothing else, and grade 2 taught us only those things, and put us through this process and made us believe that if we're good boys and girls throughout this whole thing, then we'll get a good job and it'll last us for life, and we'll learn everything that we'll have needed to learn for life in school. If we hadn't been through that, we'd have been different people, and we probably would have made our dreams come true more so and sooner and better. And this is a regret that, there's nothing we can do about anything about for ourselves, but there is something we can do about it for the next generation, which is exactly the differentiation you're making there about homeschooling. It's not taking the school curriculum and reproducing it at home. It's taking the experience of growing up as a human being and allowing it to take place as it naturally does in a home with a family, pursuing your interests, observing what your family is doing, it either being inspired or turned off by that, and following in your own and like marching in your own footsteps rather than following in the footsteps of every single person in the population that they're all forced to follow the exact same path. And it just seems when you express it that way, and when you point out the absurdity of making everybody go through the exact same learning process, learning the exact same things with no diversity and no variety in what people are learning and the experiences that they have. It just, like, how will future generations possibly look at this and not say our civilization was completely insane?
Mhm.
Like completely unnatural, completely deranged, to believe that the diversity of human experience didn't need to happen through experiencing your own individual life, but just through putting everyone through the exact same simulated experience. It's it's crazy, right? Like it just when you describe it as it really is, it's shocking, and shocking that we could fall for it and we could believe it's the best way to raise humanity. And now we can see, well, after a few generations of public schooling with mandated curriculums, we're really struggling as a species to know what's up and what's down and what's true and what's false. And it's got a lot to do with this, right? Never falling into the machine in the first place is great. And that's not to say anything critical about teachers or people who have a passion for teaching. It's just to say when you build a whole machine that
Yep.
that mass produces human beings as to all be the identical product, essentially, you're missing out on the whole point, because the most decentralized system we know of is humanity. Right? It's like every single person is given their own whole brain, which is a very independent learning instrument, and they're not all meant to learn the exact same things, let alone all at the exact same time at the exact same age.
It's such an excellent point you bring up about the teachers, because you can get, look, we're not here to trigger teachers. I'm here to champion teachers and mentors. And I want them to know that they are just as trapped in the system as the kids are. In fact, it's pretty sick what the system has actually tricked them into believing that they are actually helping children. And they've taken these personalities, these people that are born to be mentors and born to teach and born to help kids. And that's all they want to do. And then but the only game in town is this game over here which is
Right.
controlling you and manipulating you to actually destroy children's love of learning. And it's truly, I mean, Pink Floyd tried to warn us, guys, you know,
Right.
just another brick
Yeah,
in the
no,
wall.
they set it up in the wall for sure. I just even think back of like you watch historical drama of schoolhouses 100, 200 years ago, where all the kids of all different grades were in one school room, taught by one teacher who was teaching all the different each kid what they could learn, knew each kid was, what wasn't reading from a top-down curriculum, wasn't subjecting everyone to the exact same test or the exact same essay. It wasn't everyone was getting the exact same thing. And you could see you can see even when it's acted out that there's a relationship between each kid and the teacher understands what each kid is trying to learn. That's an acceptable form of education. When each teacher only teaches one grade or only teaches one course and only teaches the same thing over and over, you're also siphoning out from that teacher's experience what it's like to work individually with individuals, right? And the whole idea of mass education wipes away this notion of the individual. I don't mean to say that it wipes it away entirely, but boy, does it ever play a small role, the the individual, and that's kind of special need. It's referred to as special needs. Like if you have individual needs, they're special needs. It's like, well, we're all special. We all are individuals. Give me a break.
It's unbelievable. Now, are you guys aware of the General Education Board?
No, that's the
All
first
right.
time I've ever heard that, a three-letter
Scott, have
acronym.
you come across this in?
The General Education Board.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of the board. Obviously, general education, yes, but not the specific board.
Okay. So the General Education Board was founded, set up in a secret meeting of 6 or 7 men in a room in 1902. So this is the pre-Jekyll Island playbook, right? So in 1902, they all got together and decided, in America, this is American education system. This is what I learned from John Taylor Gatto. And they got together and they had this little secret meeting on how we should shape the education system for America after Horace Mann had gone over in the late 1800s to Prussia to study how were Germany doing it, because, well, Prussia was a northern state of Germany at the time. Because, this is what we need to bring to America. This is how we need to, stamp out all of this entrepreneurial pursuits and individualism and all of that kind of stuff. We don't want all of these disparate religions here, there, and everywhere just causing trouble. We want a unified America. There's a reason you still recite the Pledge of Allegiance each morning in a classroom. Now, the General Education Board, like you can look at their own website.
Was John Dewey one of these 6 gentlemen?
John Dewey was no, he was not one of the 6 gentlemen, but he was very, very much part of shaping the American education system.
Yeah, I know John Dewey.
The gentlemen were Morris Ketchum Jessup. So John D. Rockefeller, Robert Curtis Ogden, George Foster Peabody, I'm sure you recognize that surname, Jabez Lamar Monroe Curry, William Henry Baldwin Jr., and Wallace Buttrick. So there's a few key names in there, Rockefeller being the one that ended up funding the whole General Education Board with $1 million back in 1902. And
which was a huge amount of money back then.
Oh my God.
A
Come on.
Imagine more than $1 billion by today's standards, right?
Yeah. Imagine a state school education back in 1902 having access to $1 million. Well, they didn't unless it was gifted to them. But then it was over to Frederick T. Gates to wrap that all up in philanthropy in air quotes. And you can see where this is going and why now universities have, endowment plans and all this kind of stuff. But I want to read you the philosophy of the General Education Board, the white paper, if you will. And this is actually, it was titled the Country School of Tomorrow. And you can find it on their own website. And this was published in 1913. And
same year as the Federal Reserve. What an interesting coincidence.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, a lot of bad stuff happened around that time.
A lot of random
a lot of good ideas of how to change, like these overarching, highly centralized ideas, central bank, central education.
Mhm.
They found their, and this was around the same time, of the Bolshevik Revolution, was it not? Like socialism was taking over the world. This notion that centralization was the answer, and the centralization meant efficiency and productivity, and that's what factories were, and that's what all these things were, and it took the world by storm, and nobody saw what was coming.
Mhm. So the
Here
the
it is.
the opening the opening sentence of the Bitcoin white paper. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. This is the opening sentence of the philosophy of the General Education Board. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand.
Holy shit.
You can't make this shit up.
People are clay that we shape.
Yeah, that's scary.
It-
People are docile sheep
It's not
that
even
we
hidden.
mold.
It's
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So
How you wonder, how can such a thing be said? That's the quiet part out loud in writing from the very outset, right? That was not seen as terrifying or offensive or, you know, beyond. And we see the same sort of things today, right? Like it's not like the people who we deem to be villains hide their intent. They do say the quiet part out loud all the time. They hold a global forum every year to bring people around where they can say these sorts of things, and
I
they're
will
respected.
I will read you
You're going to read us some
another.
more.
I'll read you another sentence. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple, as well as a very beautiful one: to train these people as we find them to be a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children into a little community and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way.
It's so evil. Like it, you just like, how can you not write that and think, well, within a generation or two, we will have lost all the great philosophers, authors, artists, and everything else, and we will have molded everybody into docile, uninteresting, barely human robots. They wouldn't have had the word robot in their vocabulary then, likely, but some kind of soulless pleb. Was there so much greatness at those times that they thought we don't need to nurture it? Greatness is the natural state of humanity, but there's not enough room for greatness. So we need to beat it out. We need to siphon it out of people over years long indoctrination. But it's clear that the intent of this thing is years long indoctrination to suck the life, the passion out, the excellence out of human beings,
Mhm.
and to do so while they're children, when they're still vulnerable and impressionable. It's really about as evil a statement as you can make. And it's amazing that it comes from like the um the beneficence, the desire to be charitable of those who have resources, of those who've achieved greatness. I've achieved greatness, and I intend to use it to bestow a gift on the world, which is to siphon greatness from the future. It's very twisted. I really don't understand. Like, I don't understand how such a thing can be, right? I'm naive about it. I'm not saying that I deny that it exists. Like, I see it all the time. I see Bill Gates is doing the exact same things that John D. Rockefeller did. He thinks he's helping the world, and like the last thing we need is more of his help. Like without any help, we're better off. But it strikes me as I don't understand how someone could think that that would be beneficial to the species. They have such a different view of humanity and what the purpose of a life is than I do, that it just seems alien to me. It seems evil.
It 100% is. There's no other
Right.
way to. I mean, Scott. I mean, yeah. I've said it 100 times. If we want to starve the beast, opting out of their monetary system is not going to help. We've got to stop feeding our kids' hearts, minds, and souls to it. Just take them away. Just draw a line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that lots of things pop in my head when you read those things, but one of them has to be that, obviously the people who are writing that are the people who are in charge, and they're trying to make sure that their lineage continues to be the ones in charge by not letting anybody else break that creativity barrier or that power barrier. Whereas it's almost like creating price caps on products. You're doing something that you think is good, but you're down the streamline, you're just hurting everything. And that civilization in this case is just going to turn against those people in charge eventually. And whether it's 10 years from now or 100 years from after they read it or 1,000, we know what's going to happen when that sort of stuff comes to light. And to think that somebody who has kids themselves, as I assume most of those men do who wrote those things, can think of other people's kids and not want what's best for them also is completely foreign and crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's just like everybody's equal. Let everybody learn the way they want to learn, create what they want to create. The top will rise to the top, and everybody else will rise to the top in their own way. There isn't actually a true top for anybody. Everybody's your own person, like you've said multiple times, Tomer. And so how somebody who is just a human being can want to cap the privilege of other human beings is something that has never made sense to me in any way, whether we're talking about education or anything else. Let people just be. I think is probably just a great motto.
100%.
And I think this is it, right? It's like don't give me your things for me to be in charge of it. Take charge of it yourself, right? That's the message of the decentralized movement, right? Like, don't ask me to be the leader of your money. Take charge of your money for yourself. Don't ask me to be the educator of all your children. Educate your children yourselves and believe in yourself enough to know that you can do these things because you care about these things for yourself better than anyone who has scale at their disposal but doesn't give a shit about you, right? Because if they have scale at their disposal and doesn't give a shit about you, they're going to build a scale machine that harms you. And that's what all this big education, big pharma, big government, big food, big health, big money, big banks, that's what we've reaped now, right? We have these things and we look at them and we're dependent on them, and we know that they don't care about us. We know that they're harming us because they're harming us we spend all half our day on trying to get a hold of them for how they ripped us off and disserviced us, and that we have no other alternative. This is what we have to fix. And we're like 100 years into this. So it took 100 years to fuck things up this badly. Who knows how long it'll take to fix them.
Well, Bitcoin fixes it all, and that's what we're here for. So, final
Yeah.
question to both of you. Leave it on a more positive note.
Yeah.
And Scott, you know what's coming. Tomer, I'm sure you've probably remembered, but no judgment if you've forgotten. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
So this is now the fourth time I've had to answer this, and I had to go back and remember the other three that I've said. The first time I said I'd want to give it to a kind of popular athlete out there. I think I said like a LeBron James to help spread it through people that have that eyeballs. The second time, I said Charlotte, since she was a little older now, to make sure that she had that knowledge to be able to get to understand what was coming. Last time, I said Bob Iger, who was the president of I think he then left and then came back in this time of Disney, to be able to get somebody in charge in that realm of our kids' lives to understand Bitcoin. So those have been the three of the past, and I've been thinking about this for a few days now because there's a challenge, and the one thing I kept coming back to, well, I already gave one to Charlotte. I have to give the other. I have to give one to Zoe, or else it's not going to make sense. So that'll have to be my fourth answer. Is it'll have to be Zoe so that she can understand, the type of world that she's going to grow up in. I think I'm fairly confident in knowing that just like with Charlotte and all these other kids, like whether it's Lauren or anybody else, it's just second nature to them. They have nothing to unlearn like the rest of us did. And so I'm fully confident in whether it's Zoe or all these other Bitcoin babies that are out there that are part of this community, that it's not going to be anything hard for them to understand the importance of or what it is, or be scared of it, or think of it as something crazy or convoluted. They're just going to know it as money or a savings vehicle, or all the other many things that Bitcoin can bring about. And so yeah, for this answer will be the second child, and that'll have to go to Zoe when she's able to get that orange pill.
Perfect. Toma?
Yeah, well, I'm done trying to give orange pills to big, rich, famous, powerful people. I'm giving mine to my wife. I've said as much to her recently. She's certainly warmed up a lot to Bitcoin since 10 years ago when she thought I lost my mind and went crazy with obsession with this thing. And she's slowly coming around. But if I could just get her there in an instant, it would be great, because I would love to see her enthusiastically coming to the conferences and appreciating the appreciation, sharing the appreciation that I have for this thing, and being able to see eye to eye on so many more of these factors that I'm
Shout
going
out
through.
to my wife who has been dragged along to the conferences, but that's made the difference because she's met her people now. She's met other women there, and they're just, it's like when dudes meet each other for the first time, Bitcoiners, you just stand there and like 3 hours later, you're still standing up talking.
Right.
Sharing the deepest shit you've ever shared with any other human being. And
Right.
Rachel Geyer over in Germany, she started Les Femmes Orange, which is very much like what Natalie Brunel started in America, with little side events to get the wives, girlfriends, aunts, sisters, whoever together, in one place, and just have that outlet. Like, why are we all in this freaking, like, what's going on here? And it's been amazing to see. So you maybe have to drag a kick and a scream into one of these conferences, or go a few days early, book a spa, get the get the conference tickets as well, and then a few days afterwards. And Madeira was a great, like you said right at the beginning of this show, so many families there because it was a holiday destination too, and wife and kids all came together, and that's been something great to see. So shout out.
Now we have until 2028 to have to plan for the next one, as I think Andre put out there
in
yesterday.
Madeira. Yes, 2028. Yeah, you guys have got some waiting time. That was a big decision on his part. I think it's the right decision. I think it's amazing. I think it's a very unique decision as well. And, it'd be the same kind of time of year just before the next halving. And look, we aren't conference organizers. This takes a lot out of people. If this isn't a profession anybody ever had any kind of contact with before, and trying to put one of these things together takes its toll. And they don't generate any kind of revenue. So it's a huge, huge undertaking. I hope that changes. And I hope we can have more Bitcoin conferences. I know people already think we're oversaturated. I'm a complete opposite view of that. I think we need more of everything. More, I mean, they're so educational, they're life-changing. So anyway, where can people reach out to either of you and pre-order the book, Scott, and anything else that they might want to get in touch with either of you about?
So as far as the book goes, or any other Shamory products, so everything's on the website, shamory.com, SHAMORY. That discount code Bitten would still be out there for everybody who wants to grab that for 10% off. So feel free to use that to your heart's content. So we're sitting here, like Tomer said, on July 4th. I'm I guess the only one in America who's spending part of my 4th of July on this call, talking to these awesome guys. but we'll be out at the pool a little bit later. But get that up there in the next few weeks. Swing by our booth in Nashville. We are booth B46 in the Bazaar area. If you're listening to this before there, if you can't find us, just listen for Screaming, I guess 6-month-old. Then and you'll probably find us there. But we'll have all of our products as well as a few new things that we haven't put out there, just kind of fun side things. So whether it's the website or at the conference in Nashville or Pacific Bitcoin in October, we will be around on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it, at Play Shamory, or I'm at Scott M. Sibley. And shoot a DM, find our information on the website to contact us. We're always happy to explore ideas, just like we did with Tomer. So if you have an idea you want to collaborate on, get in touch, and love meeting other Bitcoiners around the world. Oh, the other thing I will mention, if you are at the conference, and then I think we'll have a Geyser Fund for this sometime soon, we're going to start a new program that's going to allow people to donate any of our books or games to kids around the world in different communities. And so for the conference, we're trying to partner with some local kid centers type things to be able to allow things who are at our booth, if they want to purchase a book on behalf of those centers. And then when we're in Nashville, we'll bring them to them. So just a way, we've been thinking so many of our sales obviously are within the Bitcoin community, and we need to break out of that to really help spread the word. And so this is an idea where we can say, okay, let's get these books and games in the hands of kids who may have never heard Bitcoin before, but if it just shows up at their library or at their school or part of their baseball team or soccer team, whatever it may be, as just a little gift. And one way to do it would be through these kind of simple donations where we can send them around there. So that's a project that we'll be putting out there over the next few weeks, and we'll have the ability to do so at our booth in Nashville as well. But
and that'll be on Geyser, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, I'll look out for that, and make sure you DM and tweet me that so I can retweet it, and then I can send some sats. Tomer, where can people find you?
Yeah, the easiest place to find me is at x.com, I guess, twitter.com/Tomer I've got links to my Noster NPub there, and there's articles of mine on the Swan blog at swan.com/signal, and at tomersterlite.medium.com. There's a couple of really interesting films that are also on the Swan channel. Bitcoin is Generational Wealth. If you haven't seen it yet, it certainly speaks to this education point that we talked about. In its projection of the future. And more recently, we published The Legendary Treasure of Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a longer film. It's 38 minutes long. It tells the story of Satoshi. It's a deeply philosophical piece. So really encourage people to see it. It got lots of feedback on it. The Bitcoiners love it, but in particular, that they're able to share it with people in their lives who aren't yet Bitcoiners. And while it's not intended to fully orange pill somebody else, my experience with this film has been that it has sprouted a curiosity in people who before watching this film were not interested in Bitcoin at all. And like, I've got personal experience of people who I've had in my life for years that I've been talking about Bitcoin, and they were not interested. But when they started watching this film, they didn't think they'd get through it. They not only got through it, when they were done, they started doing a little bit of research about Satoshi Nakamoto and Bitcoin, because I wanted to see if this was actually a true story, as I claimed in the movie. So those are all fun things for people to read. I've got lots of interesting material out there, and there's plenty of podcasts that I've been on if you're intrigued to learn more about what I've produced.
As we learned earlier, after that movie, Satoshi turns into Santa. So that's
there's a whole new avenue to explore there. Is Satoshi Santa Claus, or is Santa Claus Satoshi? And was his gift in 2000 in Christmas 2008 Bitcoin?
Love it. Well, thank you both for coming on again. And I look forward to the next time we get to meet. Don't know when that will be. I'm not going to be out in Nashville or Pacific this year. So who knows? But always look forward to it. And thanks to both of you for everything you're doing for Bitcoin and furthering the education. Really appreciate it.
Same to you, Dana. Take care.
Thanks for having us.